Today we're talking about measure for measure, and I'm going to be using the screen here to highlight some text. Just a small caveat is that the pages in the pages in our book number. I'll give you the pages in our book number for the passages, and the text might not align exactly all the time, but the specific text that's in our Norton, there's no digital version of that I have access to. So just be aware there might be minor, tiny differences. It shouldn't be a big deal. Um, the play begins in a rather surprising way compared to what we're used to thinking about. There we go. It's better. What we're used to thinking about with Shakespeare. All semester we've been reading plays in which kings are desperate to hold on to power, or we have rulers who are being driven out of power, or being murdered, assassinated, what have you. This play begins with a ruler, a Duke Incento, the Duke of Vienna. Why Vienna we can get to in a minute, but the Duke of Vienna, who is willingly stepping down from power, but not in the King Lear sense of retirement, in which he wants to be a kind of emeritus king, but as a sort of social experiment. Ultimately, what we'll find out is that Vincento is stepping down from power as almost a kind of act of devious realpolitik, right? But at the beginning of the play, all we really know is that he's got a certain anxiety about things that need to be done. Essentially, the Duke decides that Vienna needs to be cleaned up. It's sort of kind of morally on decline. There's lots of prostitution, drunkenness, and things like that. But he doesn't want to be the one to do it because he knows that it will be sort of unpopular, right? And so he crafts this scheme where he's going to go on a kind of hiatus, and he's going to give power temporarily to one of his underlings, Angelo. His deputy is going to be given all the powers of the dukedom, and he knows that Angelo will do what needs to be done to get Vienna on the straight path again, all while sort of shielding the Duke from the sort of political consequences of that. And so let's see. So the Duke, he tells his attendant, call Angelo before us, right? What figure of us think you he will bear? For you must know we have, with special soul, elected him our absence to supply. Lent him our terror, dressed him with our love, and given to his deputation all the organs of our power. What think you this? He asks this Lord Aeschylus, who's just there for somebody to talk to at this scene. So in other words, right, we have lent him our terror. I'm trying to highlight here. Lent him our terror and dressed him with our love. And given his deputation all the organs of our power. Deputation meaning his position, right? terror is an interesting word here, right? Because one of the ways in which rulers rule over others is through terror, because it is the ruler who controls the sort of mechanisms of the state. And when you get right down to it, how is it that when you think about how a state maintains power, it's at least partly through sanctioned violence that the state has a kind of monopoly over. um, it's a kind of crude way of thinking of it, right? But the state can send police after you. The state can have you executed. The state can have you imprisoned legally, as long as you follow certain rules, I guess. And only the state can do that, right? You can't imprison people or execute them as a private citizen. Only the state can do that. So Angelo is going to be gifted all these powers. And what kind of person is Angelo is the question here. And Aeschylus is high on Angelo. If any in Vienna be of worth to undergo such ample grace and honor, it is Lord Angelo. And then Angelo enters. And we're going to meet this character for the first time. Always obedient to your grace's will, I come to know your pleasure. All right. And then the Duke has this speech here. And Angelo is the character that drives the action of the play, what kind of character he is, and the way he handles being thrust into power creates all the conflict of the play and all the drama of the play. He is, for lack of a better term, the way he is usually thought of is as a kind of Puritan. And you've no doubt heard the word Puritan before. It has special resonance in Shakespeare's time as a figure of very strict Protestant religious observance that feels that the standard established church, the Church of England, is too lax in its morals, right? Or too lax in its rules, and it's a little too Catholic, right? It's not a separate religion necessarily, right? It's a sort of, it's an offshoot of Anglicanism, certainly, but it's a very, very strict form, the pure form of kind of Protestant worship. Very, very, very strict. No dancing, no drinking, nothing fun, nothing fancy in the church, right? No decorations, and nothing that could be remotely conceived of as Catholic. Now, to be clear, Angelo is not explicitly a Puritan in that sense of being a religious separatist of any kind. He is very much a man of the state, but he is somebody who is very, very strictly bound to the letter of the law, its precise application. No wiggle room, no room for leniency, and certainly a man who at least espouses a kind of upright moral positioning. As Vincentio says here, Angelo, and this is in our books, this is page 554, Act 1, Scene 1, line 27. Make sure I give you both. Angelo, there is a kind of character in thy life that to the observer doth thy history fully unfold, right? So like you can tell what kind of man you are just by looking at you. Thyself and thy belongings are not thine own so proper as to waste thyself upon thy virtues, they on thee. Heaven doth, so in other words, it's not enough for you yourself to be virtuous, right? Heaven doth with us as we with torches do, not light them for ourselves. For if our virtues did not go forth, 'twere all alike as if we had them not. In other words, so think about the image of the torch here. It's very important. A torch is bright, right? It's full of light. But more importantly, what does it do? It lights the way for others. And what the Duke here is saying to Angelo is that it's not enough for you to be morally upright, right? It's not enough for an individual to be good. He also has to show others the way and kind of be a torch unto others. Um, so basically, what he's saying is he wants Angelo to be a kind of model for all of Vienna, but what he's really saying is, I want you to get this ship in line. Um, I want you to do something about all the disorder and immorality and sort of Gomorrah-like uh, 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 deprivations that are happening in the city. Hold therefore, Angelo, in our remove be thou at full ourself, mortality and mercy in Vienna. Live in thy tongue and heart. So mortality and mercy, right? The ability to put people to death, the ability to spare people. It's all your power now. And old Aeschylus here will be your second in command, even though he's supposed to be ahead of you. Old Aeschylus, though first in question, is thy secondary. Take thy commission. Okay. And then sort of the Angel's like, I don't think I should do it. I'm not ready. And then Duke's like, no more evasion. We have with a leavened and prepared choice proceeded to you. Therefore, take your honors. Our haste from hence is of so quick condition that it prefers itself and leaves unquestioned matters of needful value. We shall write to you at time in our concerning shall importune how it goes with us, and do look to know what doth befall you here. So fare you well. To the hopeful execution, I do leave you of your commission. So that's the transition, right? Of Duke Vincentio giving up his power, going into exile. He's actually going to go. He's going to be there. He's going to be disguised as a man of the cloth, as a friar, and so he's going to be sort of secretly there in the shadows, watching everything, observing everything, playing, sort of manipulating things. One of the characters, Lucio, will call him the fantastical Duke of Dark Corners, because he's going to be there lurking in the shadows. And then Angelo's like, well, hang on a second. Should we talk over some more stuff first? Let us, let us, can we help you out with the first stretch of your journey? That's what he means by bring you something on the way. And Duke's like, no, my haste may not admit it. And now here's the crux. No need, nor need you on mine honor have to do with any scruple. Your scope is as mine own, so to enforce or qualify the laws as to your soul seems good. Enforce or qualify the laws as to your soul seems good. In other words, you have absolute authority to determine what gets punished and what doesn't. And there's a kind of wink here, I think, in the sense that the Duke, there's all these laws in the books. You can't, prostitution, drinking, and all this stuff, having kids out of wedlock, all these rules are on the book. Nobody enforces them, right? People look the other way. Now it's your decision, Angelo, what rules should be enforced and what rules shouldn't be enforced. I privily away, secretly away. I'll privily away. I love the people, but do not like to stage me to their eyes, though it do well. I do not relish well their loud applause and aves vehement, nor do I think the man of safe discretion that does affect it. Once more, fare you well. So I've never really been comfortable under the public gaze, right? I don't relish the people's applause. I don't know that this is true or how much you can trust this. He's saying, I do not relish well their loud applause and aves vehement. Aves means hails, like hail the Duke, hail, hail. He's saying he's never really been comfortable with the people lavishing praise on him. But I think what's happening here is actually the opposite, right? He's afraid of the criticism that will come his way for enforcing the laws more strictly the way he feels they need to be enforced. So behind this claim, I do not relish well their loud applause and aves vehement. Behind this, there is a sense of the unsaid thing, right? Which is, I'm afraid of the people booing and jeering me and turning on me. So I'm going to have you be the bad guy, Angelo. Even though I'm not telling you that, I've picked a person of strict, upright moral character who will serve as my kind of bulldog to get to do the dirty work of cleaning things up, and I will insulate myself from all the criticism. All right. Okay, we're now on page 558, Act 1, Scene 2. And now, as you probably noticed reading the play, we have in Measure for Measure a similar kind of division of worlds to what we saw in Henry IV, Part 1, where we have a world of the court and of sort of loftier people, where people speak in poetry. And then we have the sort of lower realm of the tavern and the whorehouse, where there's a lot more prose, although also some poetry. And in Act 1, C2, we meet Lucio, who's this sort of kind of man about town, likes to drink, likes to carouse, likes to sleep with prostitutes, run up gambling debts, all kinds of things. Your typical kind of rakish sort of bawdy figure. Very fun, very quick-witted, lots of better plug this in. Lots of sharp rejoinders and witty repartee and things like that. So he's in the House of Mistress Overdone, which is a house of ill repute, let's say. And in this scene, we're out on the street, and he's been having this debate with a couple of gentlemen about what's going on in the world and what's going on with Vienna and what's going on with what's going on with the Duke and all that. And he sees an acquaintance of his, Claudio, being perp walked right through the street. You know what perp walked means, right? He's being arrested. He's being led away by guards, by officers. And this is at this is page 557. Well, he is actually led through in 557, and being led to prison with Juliet, his lover. All right, Claudio, very top of page 558. Oh, where are we? Claudio, fellow, he's talking to the cops, right? The officers who are leading him. Fellow, why dost thou show me thus to the world? Bear me to prison where I am committed. I do not do it by evil disposition, but from Lord Angelo by special charge. What he's saying is, take me to prison already. Why are you parading me through the streets to show me off? And of course, the answer to that is the same reason why they show perp walks on the news, right? They show the guy being let out in handcuffs down the steps or up the steps of the courthouse or whatever it is, because you're making a public display of the arrest and as a signal to the public that people are cracking down, right? Claudio has been arrested for lechery. In other words, having sex out of wedlock, and it's not the kind of crime that people are used to being enforced or prosecuted, even though it's technically illegal to have a child out of wedlock or to do, in this world, in this culture. Not necessarily in Shakespeare's world, but in the world of the play, right? And Lord Angelo has given a special charge that Claudio be paraded through the streets, right? And Claudio, thus can the demigod authority make us pay down for our offense by weight. The words of heaven. Sorry, make us pay down for our offenses by weight. The words of heaven. On whom it will, it will. On whom it will not. So, yet still 'tis just. It's like some people get caught, some people don't. But either way, justice is justice. And Lucio sees this and he's like, what's going on? Why now? Why now, Claudio? Whence comes this restraint? Why are you in, I don't know if he's in handcuffs or he's just tied up or what. Why? I guess it depends on how you stage it. Whence comes this restraint? And Claudio turns to Lucio and says, from too much liberty, my Lucio, liberty. Um, my restraint comes from too much liberty. Here meaning being too free with my affections for Julieta, spelled in different ways in the play, depending on Shakespeare's need for meter. From too much liberty, my Lucio, liberty. As surfeit is the father of much fast, so every scope by the immoderate use turns to restraint. Our natures do pursue like rats that raven down their proper bane, a thirsty evil, and when we drink, we die. Which is all basically a very bitter way of saying that, that pursuing the pleasures of life too much is what's going to lead him to his death. If I could speak so wisely under an arrest, I would send for certain of my creditors. And yet, to say the truth, I had as lief have the foppery of freedom as the morality of imprisonment. Right? Lucio's like, I'll take the foolishness of freedom over the morality of imprisonment. Right? Imprisonment kind of forces a morality on you. When you're in prison, you can't drink, you can't, enjoy life, you can't have sex, you can't feast or anything like that, especially in a 16th century prison. But I'll take the foppery of freedom over the morality of imprisonment. What's thy offense, Claudio? What, but to speak would offend again. What, is it murder? In other words, like, this is the kind of thing people typically get arrested for in Vienna. Murders, serious things like that. No. Lechery? In other words, sexual licentiousness. Claudio, call it so. Away, sir, you must go. One word, good friend Lucio, a word with you. 100 if they'll do any good. Is lechery so looked after? Is lechery so looked after? In other words, are they really cracking down on lechery of all things? Because again, even though it's a law in the books, everybody's used to just sort of people looking, nobody really cares to enforce the laws against lechery. Otherwise, everybody would have to go to jail. Thus stands it with me. Upon a true contract, I got possession of Julieta's bed. You know the lady. She is fast my wife, save that we do the denunciation lack of outward order. So Julieta's my bride and everything but the legal specifics, right? The contract, the dowry, and things like that. So they have sort of made. Oh, shoot, I gotta plug this in. Hang on, grab my plug here. Okay, so Claudio explains that everything is they're married in sort of betrothed, right? But they haven't. There's been no agreement for the dowry. This we came out to only for propagation of a dower remaining in the coffer of her friends, from whom we thought it meet to hide our love till time had made them for us. But it chances the stealth of our most mutual entertainment with character too gross is writ on Juliet. And what he means is he got her pregnant. So now everybody could see that they've been sleeping together before the marriage was officially official through the exchange of the dowry. And Lucio figures it out. With child, perhaps? Unhappily, even so. And then he explains that Angelo is the one who's sort of cracking down. And the new deputy, now for the Duke, whether it be the fault and glimpse of newness, or whether that the body public be a horse whereon the governor doth ride, who newly in the seat, that it may know he can command, lets it straight feel the spur. He's like, in other words, he's like a rider on a new horse who wants to let the horse know right away who's boss, Angelo. Whether the tyranny be in his place or in his eminence that fills it up, I stagger in. But this new governor awakes me all the enrolled penalties, which have like unscoured armor hung by the wall so long that 19 zodiacs have gone round and none of them been worn. And for a name now puts the drowsy and neglected act freshly on me. 'Tis surely for a name. So these laws, these penalties, he says, are like armor that's been hanging up on the wall for years. No one ever uses them. They're probably getting rusty, right? But he's taken them off the wall, dusted them off, and is enforcing them again. These laws. So Claudio's the one who is suffering for this now. Lucio says appeal. He says he will, and then he asks, he has, but it's not working. He says he tells Lucio, he says, get my sister and see if she can accomplish anything. I prithee, Lucio, do me this kind service. This day my sister should the cloister enter, and there receive her approbation. Acquaint her with the danger of my state. Implore her in my voice that she make friends to the strict deputy. Bid herself assay him. I have great hope in that, for in her youth there is a prone and speechless dialect, such as move men. Beside, she hath prosperous art when she will play with reason and discourse, and well she can persuade. So he says my sister is about to enter a cloister. I don't know if you know what that means or not, but a cloister is a convent or a monastery or something like that, where people receive holy orders. In other words, she's a nun, or she's about to take her vows to become a nun. And Claudio says to Lucio, go find her and tell her what's going on, so that she can beseech Angelo on my behalf. If he won't listen to me, maybe he'll listen to a nun, holy orders, and in any case, she's very persuasive, and she'll make a good case on my behalf. And then they take him off to jail. We'll skip a little bit of the stuff with the Duke, who is basically in this scene. In the next scene, the Duke explains that he's letting Angelo be the lightning rod for him, to take on the to do all the punishing and get all. I have on Angelo impose the office, who may in the ambush of my name strike home, and yet my nature never in the fight to do in slander. In other words, I won't get in trouble. I'll let Angelo do all the dirty work. All right, but I want to talk about Isabella now. Now, this is the crux of the play here, bringing Isabella into this. And maybe you can already sort of see where this is going. We have on the one hand Angelo, who's a very strict, sort of puritanical enforcer of the rules. And then we have Isabella, who's this nun, or this votaress, this novitiate, who is really into her own chastity and her own moral uprightness. She's going to become a sister of the of St. Clair. This is Act 1, Scene 4. And I think the most important thing to know about Isabella in this first act is that she's extremely strict. In fact, she finds the orders of the nunnery to be a little bit too lax. She's talking to this other nun, Francisca, in the beginning. And have you nuns no farther privileges? This is page 561. Sorry, 559. No, 560. And have you nuns no farther privileges? Act 1, Scene 4. Are these not large enough? Isabella. Yes, truly, I speak not as desiring more, but rather wishing a more strict restraint upon the sisterhood, the votarists of St. Clair, in other words. Isabella's like, is this all you guys get to do? And the other nun's like, isn't this enough? And Isabella's like, well, I actually think it should be stricter. So Shakespeare's sort of making the point right out here that Isabella is not just a she's a nun, but more than that, she's also like what you might what I actually wrote my dissertation on things like this, on asceticism and renouncing bodily joys and fun and wealth and pleasure and things like that as it's represented in Shakespeare. So I have a lot to say about Isabella, but suffice it for now to know that she is what you might call an elite ascetic. In other words, she's really, 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 really strict, and she has no interest in sex or wealth or indulgences of gluttony or whatever you might want to call it. She is a real deal nun who's about to enter the cloister for the rest of her life and become a bride of Christ when Lucio comes calling, right? And we know what Lucio is going to tell her. He's going to say, um, he sees her, and the first thing he says is, "Hail, Virgin," which is if you be. Hail, Virgin, if you be, as those cheek roses proclaim you are no less. First of all, this is, of course, redolent of Hail, Virgin, makes you think of the Catholic prayer, the Ave Maria, right? The Hail Mary, which is not a prayer that Protestants say, certainly not puritanical ones. Um, but, of course, Isabella is not Protestant. She's Catholic. She's a nun. And there we have a sort of distinction between Shakespeare's world and Shakespeare's audience and Shakespeare's play. Shakespeare's play is set in like medieval Vienna, and it's Catholic, right? And there's no Church of England, there is no Episcopal tradition, and there is no Reformation, and there's certainly no Puritans in the formal sense of the term. What we have here in Isabella is somebody who is part of a Catholic order that is sort of alien to Shakespeare's world, except as a sort of archetype, or even as a sort of joke, right? If you think of a nun as somebody who is worthy of respect for her religious devotion, it's a little bit more complicated than that in the early 17th century in England. Nuns and monks and people like that don't exist in England, right? The monasteries have been dissolved, the convents have been dissolved, right? All of this is part of the Reformation that happened beginning with King Henry VIII and throughout the Tudor dynasty. So nuns and things like that only really exist in an imaginative sense, and so as maybe they're represented on stage, or as they're imagined in the popular imagination. And the problem with a nun in Shakespeare's time is that, kind of like what this play is getting at, it was seen as so strict that it was sort of hubristic, or an expression of human pride. Women shouldn't be celibate for life. They should be married and procreate and sort of contribute to the propagation of the state and the nation and society at large. In other words, they should be. A nun is a curiously independent figure in the sense that they're not subject to male control, at least in their day-to-day lives. They live in these communities of women, run by women. Yes, they answer to larger church authorities, but in their day-to-day lives, they don't deal with a lot of men. And, the Protestant social order of 17th century says that, well, women should be married and women should obey their fathers, and then they should obey their husbands, and they should give birth to children, none of which nuns do. So, Isabella's an interesting figure. She's going to be pulled out of the convent by Lucio and sent, and say, please speak to Angela on behalf of your brother. And in doing so, she's going to be thrust back into the world on the cusp of becoming this lifetime devotee, a votaress of St. Clair. And it's not necessarily that nuns are bad, but that nuns are perhaps not doing what they should be doing, which is becoming part of the patriarchal order. Right? You follow me? So anyway, Isabella can't believe it at first, right? And then and he explains the whole thing to her. And first she's like, I don't know. He's sort of first she's like horrified, like he's gotten her pregnant, and how could he, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, she's got to marry her, et cetera, et cetera. And then Lucio explains, well, there's this new guy, Angelo, who's really strict, and he's going to execute him, put him to death. And Isabella's like, what can I do about it? And Lucio says, alas, what poor abilities in me to do him good? Lucio, essay the power you have. Isabella, my power? Alas, I doubt. Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt, right? Don't be scared. You have to try. Go to Lord Angelo and let him learn to know when maidens sue, men give like gods. When a pretty girl asks something, men give like gods. That's a great line. When maidens sue, men give like gods. Not sue in the legal sense, but sue as in entreat people for something. When they weep and kneel, all their petitions are as freely theirs as they themselves would owe them. So if you really turn on the waterworks, generate the sympathy, you'll get whatever you want. And Isabella says, I'll see what I can do, Lucio, but speedily. I will about it straight, no longer staying, but to give the mother notice of my affair. I humbly thank you. Commend me to my brother. Soon at night, I'll send him certain word of my success. All right. And then, okay, so now we're going to have the I want the real the drama in this play is primarily, I mean, the best stuff in this play is what happens between Angelo and Isabella. All right. And in some ways, so this will take us to Act 2. Scene 4. Act 2, Scene 4. Sorry, that's too far. Act 2, that's the second Angelo Isabella scene. Act 2, Scene 2. Page 569. And in some ways, Angelo and Isabella are a lot alike because they are both strict adherents of rules, right? Isabella, the moral rules of Christianity, but also the specific order rules of the Society of St. Clair, of the convent, right? Angelo, a strict interpreter of the law, who has no mercy or does not give a second thought to executing people for lechery, and is not willing to sort of brook any leniency in the execution of the rules, which is pretty much what the Duke wanted from him, right? All right, here we go. Isabella, I am a woeful suitor to your honor, but please, but your honor, hear me. So again, we have these two. We got the sort of puritanical Angelo and the nun Isabella, kind of type and anti-type, like reflections of each other in some ways, but also very different in other ways, right? Isabella is, after all, here to entreat Angelo for mercy. Well, what's your suit? There is a vice, Isabella. There is a vice that most I do abhor. She's talking about sex. There is a vice that most I do abhor, and most desire should meet the blow of justice, for which I would not plead, but that I must, for which I must not plead, but that I am at war twixt will and will not. Like, there's this sin that I really hate, sex, and I want everybody who commits it to feel the blow of justice. So she's like, I'm on Angelo's side, right? But I have to say something in this case, right? I'm at war twixt will and will not. I'm torn about it, but I have to say something. Angelo, well, what's the matter? I have a brother is condemned to die. I do beseech you, let it be his fault. and not my brother. Which is a really interesting line, right? Let it be his fault and not my brother. It's related to, you may have heard the saying, right? Hate the sin, love the sinner, right? Um, in other words, like condemn the sin, but not the man. It's a what does it really mean? And Angelo sort of says, like, how does that work, right? Condemn the fault. Provost, heaven give thee moving graces. The provost there is sort of rooting for Isabella to be successful. Condemn the fault and not the actor of it? Like, what? How does that work? How can I condemn the sin and not condemn the man who committed it? Let his fault be condemned and not my brother. Condemn the fault and not the actor of it? Why, every fault's condemned ere it be done. Mine were the very cipher of a function, to find the faults whose fine stands in record, and let go by the actor, right? The faults are already condemned. It already says it. This is wrong. My job is to, if I were to let mine were the very cipher of a function, to find the faults whose fine stands in record. I would be like a redundancy. A cipher of a function is a redundancy. If I were to condemn something that's already been condemned and then let the actor go. Oh, just but severe law. I had a brother then. Heaven keep your honor. And Isabella's like, oh, just but severe law. Oh, well, I had a brother then. In other words, he's gone. Heaven keep your honor. And she's going to turn around and leave. Like, that's it. Please spare my brother. And Angela's like, no, I can't do that. And she's like, okay, I tried. And she turns around to leave. And Lucio's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Give it not so or so. Give it not so or so to him again, entreat him. Like, what do you can't give up yet? Kneel down. Don't you know how to beg? Don't you know how to entreat somebody? Don't you know how to generate sympathy? Come on, kneel down before him. Hang upon his gown. You are too cold. If you should need a pin, you could not with more tame a tongue desire it. To him, I say, right? If you were asking for a pin, you couldn't say it any more matter-of-factly. Come on. So Isabella turns back. Must he needs die? Maiden, no remedy. Yes, I do think that you might pardon him, and neither heaven nor man grieve at the mercy. I will not do it. But can you, if you would? Look, what I will not, that I cannot do. But might you do it, and do the world no wrong, if so your heart were touched with that remorse as mine is to him? Right. If you felt what I feel, you might do it, right? Angelo, he's sentenced. 'Tis too late. Lucio, whispering to her, you are too cold, right? You're being too, matter of fact, too cold. Too late? Why, no, I that do speak a word may call it back again. Well, believe this, no ceremony that to great ones longs, not the king's crown, nor the deputed sword, the marshal's truncheon, nor the judge's robe, become them with one half so good a grace as mercy does. If he had been as you, and you as he, you would have slipped like him, but he, like you, would not have been so stern. Right? If the roles were reversed, my brother would have pardoned you in a second, right? And nothing becomes a ruler like the act of mercy. Angelo, it's getting annoyed now. Pray you be gone. I would to heaven I had your potency, and you were Isabel. Should it then be thus? No, I would tell what 'twere to be a judge, and what a prisoner. Right. Touch him. There's the vein, right? Isabel's basically saying, I wish I had your power and you were me. It wouldn't be the way it is. I would tell what were to be a judge and what a prisoner, right? In other words, I know the real meaning of justice. And Lucio's getting excited now. He's like, yes, that's it. Go for it. Your brother is a forfeit of the law, and you but waste your words. When I do Angelo's voice, what I'm hearing in my head, what I always hear in my head when I read Angelo is Christopher Lee. He's the actor that played Saruman in The Lord of the Rings. I don't know, something about it. It's just real stern and serious. Your brother is a forfeit of the law, and you but waste your words. Alas, alas! Why, all the souls that were forfeit once. And he that might the vantage best have took found out the remedy. Now, what she's talking about here is Christian theology. All the souls that were forfeit once. All the souls that were forfeit once. In other words, we were all damned, right? We were all damned and doomed to hell and hellfire until God found out the remedy, which of course was Christ, right? He that might the vantage best have took found out the remedy. So God looked at us and redeemed us from our sins through Christ. How would you be if he, which is the top of judgment, should but judge you as you are? Oh, think on that. And mercy then will breathe within your lips like man new made. What if God judged you the way you judged others? You would be doomed. Think on that, right? Be content, fair maid. It is the law, not I, condemn your brother. Were he my kinsman, brother, or my son, I should be thus with him. He must die tomorrow. Tomorrow? Oh, that's sudden. Spare him. Spare him. Now she's really getting into it. He's not prepared for death. Even for our kitchens, we kill the fowl of season, right? We don't kill chickens the second we wait till they're in season. Shall we serve heaven with less respect than we do minister to our gross selves? Good, my lord, bethink you. Who is it that hath died for this offense? There's many have committed it. Lucio, aye, well said. In other words, right, lots of people have done this. How many of them have been executed? Right? None of them. And Angelo's got an answer. The law hath not been dead, though it hath slept. Those many had not dared to do that evil if the first that did the edict infringe had answered for his deed. People wouldn't have done it so much if the first person to get caught doing it had been executed, which is a fair point, right? If people knew that you could get executed for having children out of wedlock, they'd probably stop doing it, or it would be a lot less common. Now 'tis awake, the law. Now 'tis awake, takes note of what is done, and like a prophet looks in a glass that shows what future evils, either new or by remissness new conceived, and so in progress to be hatched and born, are now to have no successive degrees, but ere they live, to end. Whew, that's quite a sentence. Let me break it down here, right? The law is awake, so it looks in the mirror, it sees what it's done. Sorry, what am I talking about? It takes note of what it's done, right? The law realizes what it's done, and like a prophet, it looks in a mirror, like a crystal ball, and sees all the future crimes that could happen, but won't happen if justice is done now. In other words, this execution of Claudio is not just about Claudio, right? It's about all the future indecencies and sins that will not occur if people see that the law is now awake and active. Isabella, yet show some pity. Angelo, I show it most of all when I show justice. For then I pity those I do not know, which a dismissed offense would after gall, and do him right that answering one foul wrong lives not to act another. Be satisfied. Your brother dies tomorrow. Be content, right? She's like, show some pity. He's like, I show pity when I show justice, right? The conflict between justice and mercy is one of the oldest in human civilization, right? Justice. Me giving a 0 to a paper that is late. Mercy. Me saying it's okay, I can take it late, right? You're fine. What's the downside of the ladder? Well, you know, once students start to believe that no due date matters, they stop turning things in on time, right? So you somebody with power must always weigh justice and mercy against each other and try to figure out the right thing to do. Um, I had a professor in graduate school who would say, justice must always outweigh mercy when he would not give us extensions for things. I'm more on the other end. I'm less an Angelo and more of a Duke Vincentio, I guess, in terms of granting mercy where it seems appropriate. Um, so you must be the first that gives the sentence, and he that suffers. Oh, it is excellent to have a giant's strength, but it is tyrannous to use it like a giant. Lucio, that's well said. Could great men thunder? Isabella's on a roll now. Could great men thunder as Jove himself does? Jove would ne'er be quiet, for every pelting petty officer would use his heaven for thunder. Nothing but thunder! Merciful heaven! Thou rather with thy sharp and sulphurous bolt splits the unwedgeable and gnarled oak than the soft myrtle. But man, proud man, dressed in a little brief authority, most ignorant of what he's most assured, his glassy essence, uh, like an angry ape, plays such fantastic tricks before high heaven as makes the angels weep, who with our spleens would all themselves laugh mortal. That is quite a speech. What she's saying is basically that, heaven is merciful, right? But man, when he gets a little bit of authority, wants to use it to its full extent. Um, like an angry ape. um, oh, to him wench, he will relent. He's coming. I perceive it. Pray heaven she win him. Everybody's rooting for Isabella. We cannot weigh our brother with ourself. Great men may jest with saints. 'Tis wit in them, but in the less foul profanation, right? That in the captain's but a choleric word, which in the soldier is flat blasphemy. So, like, in other words, right? People in power, people with authority, have privileges that others do not, right? Why do you put these sayings upon me? Isabella was going to explain it. Because authority, though it err like others, hath yet a kind of medicine in itself that skins the vice of the top. Go to your bosom, knock there, and ask your heart what it doth know that's like my brother's fault. If it confess a natural guiltiness such as is his, let it not sound a thought upon your tongue against my brother's life. Right? In other words, look in your own heart and ask if you have any sin there like what my brother has done. And if you do, then never speak a word against his life, right? And you have to be merciful to him. It's not fair that some get to have privileges that others don't merely because they have power and authority, right? Why does the captain get to blaspheme and not the common officer? Why does Angelo get to overlook his own sins and punish harshly those of her brother? Now Angelo is feeling it, right? Ooh, she speaks, and 'tis such sense that my sense breeds with it. Fare you well, right? She's starting to get to him. Makes sense. Gentle my lord, turn back. And Angelo, I will bethink me. Come again tomorrow. Hark how I'll bribe you. Good my lord, turn back. How? Bribe me? She's being facetious. She's not being serious. I, with such gifts that heaven shall share with you. Not with fond shekels of the tested gold, or she's going to bribe him, right? But she's not, doesn't mean a literal bribe. Angela gets all like, what, bribe me? No. I, with such gifts that heaven shall share with you, not with fond, and Lucio's like, whew, you had marred all else. You almost screwed up there. not with fond shekels of the tested gold, or stones whose rates are either rich or poor as fancy values them, but with true prayers that shall be up at heaven and enter there ere sunrise, prayers from preserved souls, from fasting maids whose minds are dedicate to nothing temporal. I'm going to bribe you with prayers. Think about the prayers that will come on your behalf. Angela, well, come to me tomorrow. And Lucio's like, okay, that's good. Go, leave. Go to, 'tis well, away. Heaven keep your honor safe. Aside, amen, for I am that way going to temptation where prayers cross. Something's happened to Angelo here, right? When she said that thing about looking in your own heart and seeing if you find the sin that my brother, anything like the sin that my brother committed, he did find something. And what he found is, you can guess, right? He's very taken with Isabella. Sorry, 1 second here. I had to move because my plug wasn't reaching. He's feeling something for Isabella, right? And he's sort of shocked by this. And so she leaves and he's there alone, and we get a soliloquy now. And we know that soliloquies are always when characters are most honest, right, about what's going on. And Isabella says, save your honor, right? Good, typical way of saying goodbye. And he's like, save from thee, right? Save me from thee, from thy virtue, even from thy virtue. What's this? What's this? Right? Here's stern, strict Angelo, never broke a rule in his life. And he's feeling like lust in his heart, right? Desire or love, I guess, if you want to be charitable. Is this her fault or mine? You know, is she a temptress or is it me? Is it my failing? The tempter or the tempted? Who sins most? Ha! Not she, nor doth she tempt, but it is I that, lying by the violet in the sun, do as the carrion does, not as the flower, corrupt with virtuous season. So you put the carrion, you put a dead animal in the sun, and you put a flower in the sun. The flower is beautiful and smells nice, and the dead animal, the carrion, stinks and rots and all that, right? So I laying by this beautiful flower, and I'm becoming corrupt. It's not her fault, it's me. Can it be that modesty may more betray our sense than woman's lightness? You know, if she had come on to him with like a slutty dress, sort of trying to play on that, it wouldn't have worked. But because it was a nun and she was so graceful and moral and upright and virtuous and beautiful, right? All those things together, Angelo is completely taken. Having waste ground enough, shall we desire to raise the sanctuary and pitch our evils there? Right? Am I tempted to defile a holy sanctuary, a nun? A figurative way of thinking about a nun. Oh, fie. What dost thou, or what art thou, Angelo? Dost thou desire her foully for those things that make her good? Is it that she's so virtuous that you find it so hot, right? You desire her foully for those things that make her good? Oh, let her brother live. Thieves for their robbery have authority when judges steal themselves. How can I execute her brother now? I'm guilty of lusting after her. What, do I love her? That I desire to hear her speak again and feast upon her eyes? What is it I dream on? Oh, cunning enemy. Now he means Satan, right? Cunning enemy, that to catch a saint with saints dost bait thy hook. When Satan wants to catch a saint, he baits the hook with another saint, is what Angelo is saying, right? Angelo, Isabella, two different kinds of sort of saintly figures. Most dangerous is that temptation that doth goad us on to sin in loving virtue. To sin in loving virtue. Never could the strumpet, with all her double vigor, art, and nature, once stir my temper, but this virtuous maid subdues me quite. even till now, when men were fond, I smiled and wondered how. So I want to wrap it up here, but Angela is basically going to propose Isabella a corrupt proposition, which is, I'll let your brother go free if you sleep with me. Basically, kind of judicial rape. He he's not redeemed by his love for Isabella in any way. He becomes worse, and he tries to use it to make a corrupt bargain with her, a kind of indecent proposal, I guess would be our way of putting it. And so we'll see next time how it all plays out. But this contrast, this conflict between justice and mercy, is always an interesting one. But also this way that this idea of cunning enemy that catch a saint with saints dost bait thy hook, that Isabella presents to Angelo in this sort of ironic inversion. The most virtuous woman possible corrupts him most foully, I guess. All right. Well, we'll stop here, and I will see you next week for our last class. Thank you very much.